Matt Bracken, we got a lot of serious news. This explosion in Madrid, killing a bunch of people. They say it might be a chemical plant. We got TSA warns against truck ramming attacks by terrorists. We've got so much big news happening with Le Pen and the jihadis threatening to burn down France in a Tet2 offensive that you've been predicting. Tell us what's front and center on your radar so we can cover it when we come back.
Sure. I've thought of a new kind of analogy for where we are right now. Last year I was talking about like tsunami wave warnings. And right now I think what we're seeing is a huge social tectonic plate about to rupture. Because, you know, from the 50s with Joe McCarthy being demonized through Walter Cronkite, who was a globalist, but pretending to be, you know, the most trusted man in America, all the way until, I guess, Dan Rather and Memogate was when the new media was able to push back. Now they can't control the narrative. So now there are forces in two directions. They can't just turn this country into like Mao's China, even though our college students are that brainwashed. They are as brainwashed as the Cultural Revolution, you know, Mao's little red book. If they could, they would put us in re-education camps. But we're too strong, and we have our own new media now. So what we're seeing now are two tectonic plates, and things like Berkeley, you know, riots are little precursor shocks. But we're about to have the big rupture, the big slip fault rupture.
So the societal upheaval is upon us. I agree. And in slow motion, we're already here. A year is like a millisecond in history. I think that the plates are already shifting. The Islamists can't help it. They can feel the consciousness of their jihad, and they are already exploding. We'll be right back with Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL. 25 hours and 24 minutes into this global 30-plus hour broadcast. We've decided to go all the way to 8 o'clock tonight. The next few hours, of course, are on all of our great affiliates across the country. Please support them. Please become sponsors. Please tell your friends, your neighbors, everybody you know about the stations, because we're in an information war. We're starting to win, but the enemy's launching its counteroffensive right now. And so I just cannot encourage you all enough to pray for this country, to pray for your own family, to pray for this broadcast, to pray for the world. We'll get into North Korea, Syria, and a lot more with Matt Bracken, best-selling author, counterterrorism expert, former Navy SEAL. Comes highly recommended by a lot of great patriots. I consider him a friend of mine now, though I've never met him in person. You can read all of his novels that get into a lot of stuff he couldn't put in a nonfiction. This is your short segment, long segment coming up. So, Matt, get back into the parallel or the allegory or the example of the tectonic plates of societal systems and uncompatible cultural systems and religious systems colliding. Matt Bracken.
Yeah, they're not. I wouldn't say that they're actually colliding. We're like living in parallel worlds. We're living alongside each other, but each in our own bubbles. We're not going to change the BuzzFeed crowd, and they're not going to change us. Now, we're better armed and we know tactics, but they control a little bit more. They can still control much more of the media, so they have more ability to control the national narrative. But neither one of us is going to win. So it's not about, I don't see us as winning the culture war. What we are going to do, though, is build up so much pressure with our two divergent and opposite visions of what America should be, that there's going to be like a big slip fault earthquake when these tectonic plates release all this pressure. It's going to be in the form of a brutal civil war, similar to, say, Argentina in the 70s, Northern Ireland, Spain in the 30s, that type of a civil war where there's not really a front line as much as a war right within the society. You know, drive-by shootings, bombings, snipings.
By the way, that's what I got at when I said more and more we're coming out of our bubbles, running into each other. And it's the left and the globalists calling for violence all over the world. Is there a way for us to basically get our revenge by living well and basically surviving and not being part of this? Is there any way to avert this?
No, there's no way to avert it, because as the left, the Antifa side gets more desperate, something very important that's going on is this unmasking of Antifa. The Reddit and 4chan, weaponized autism guys are absolutely fantastic at collating all of these videos from different protests and putting names and criminal records onto these masked, anarcho-communists. But as they become unmasked, they're going to get more paranoid. We've talked about this before. It's going to be like the 60s with the SDS going underground as the weather underground. These guys that are getting unmasked are going to say, "I'm not going to any more demonstrations. I'm going to take it to the next level." Something happened in Texas last week. I think that's been vastly underreported because it's super important, because this is not, as far as we can tell, a Muslim-inspired stabbing attack, but a left BLM brainwashed person.
Sure, and this happened in and around the communists. And let me just add, our reporters were there, even got footage of him. The media covered this up, but the Antifa, we were interviewing these people. They were literally, and I'm not being mean about autism, but they literally were like half lobotomized, seriously mentally retarded, it seemed, could hardly talk, and were like zombies out of a movie. And that was the leaders. Most of them couldn't talk. So when we say weaponized autism, that's what the globalists have done.
Well, I have a short story I wrote a couple years ago called Professor Raoul X. That's if you just Google it, or on my website on my essays and links page. But these people that are the most emotionally fragile, disturbed individuals are the ones that will be the first to take up, the message. Especially in the university level, once you associate hate speech with violence, it becomes in their minds completely legitimate to use actual physical violence against people's ideas. So, for example, stabbing white frat boys becomes a legitimate act of self-defense to people who have been brainwashed.
That's right. It's a leftist jihad. And then the media points out, these are mental patients doing it. Yes, they're the ones that are susceptible and being drug in.
Exactly. And we're going to see more of that. Now, there was a story that somebody kicked to me this morning in Henrico, Virginia. A transformer was shot and then shot the next day so that the oil leaked out. And it seems to me like this was a test or a probe. How long does it take to replace the transformer? How many lights go out when we shoot one transformer? There was also a stadium, I forget, I think New England, a baseball game where...
Stay there. Let's flesh this out on the other side. You're absolutely on target. Meanwhile, every major channel, TV show says kill Trump, kill conservatives, kill patriots. They're not human. You can see this really being hyped up. So what do we do if they start a shooting war? We'll talk about it with Matt Bracken straight ahead. And we are now 25 hours, 33 minutes in the global transmission. We're going to go ahead and go 30-plus hours until 8 o'clock Central tonight. Infowars.com is the website that they hate, that they're attacking. We're getting ready to launch some new websites as well that are more modern designs. But we have the classic Infowars for you as well. It is an act of resistance against these people when you spread the link Infowars.com or enemiesforeignanddomestic.com and all of our great guests. I'm going to open the phones up in about 10 minutes on any topic you want to raise. But mainstream media is calling for revolution now. Corporate globalist media is calling for their Antifa to get violent. 2 years ago, Newsweek said the case for rioting and said attack white people, burn things down. It's always weird George Soros-funded white people pushing this. This is their deindustrialization program. This is their plan to destabilize the country. This is their plan to have cultural Marxism. And you see the same thing with the Muslims in Europe. It's a larger program. We'll talk to Matt Bracken about it in a moment. 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231 is the toll-free number to join us on this Thursday, the 4th day of May, 2017. But on May Day, we saw stabbings, we saw shootings, we saw burnings, we saw bombings, we saw Muslims attacking. They all work together. That's one of the few things that I just couldn't believe, that the so-called left, as bad as they were, would be allied with Islam when I was learning about it 20 years ago, 16 years ago. In the last 6, 7 years, people go, oh, you're an Islamophobe now. I never supported radical Islam or Orthodox Islam, the things it did. I just didn't want to go blow their countries up and stir them up. And, take out non-radical Muslims and put the bad ones in, which is what the globalists have done. It's part of a larger plan. They've opened Europe on purpose. So, yeah, I got Muslims on the mind now, folks, because the ones that do want to be free, they're heretics. And a lot of them are like that. But the ones running the show, go watch the movie The Promise. Very accurate about the Armenian genocide. What happened to Muslims didn't want to play ball. Now, we're killing all the Christians. We're running specials throughout the day. We're running some of the biggest specials in our history right now. And that's how you donate during a fundraiser. We lost basically all the extra money we had for the year that we had budgeted to fund things and fund some expansion. Because if you're not growing, you're dying against the globalists. And I'm throwing everything I got onto this, the savings, the backup, everything, to get more talk shows launched, more reporters, more investigative journalists, you name it. And look, we're changing the world. The globalists are scared. CNN came out and said, we're growing. You know, we're reaching, in some days, more people than they are. And we're not lying. We're telling the truth, which shifts paradigms. So support InfoWars and get life-changing products with our new Defense of Free Speech mega specials at InfoWarsStore.com. The establishment is launching a full-scale attack on InfoWars and free speech across the board. But thanks to your support, that will never actually be successful. And again, big fish eat little fish. We're growing in the face of this. Help us take the fight against the globalists to the next level and get super high-quality products at InfoWarsStore.com for the lowest prices. 30% off on Brain Force Plus, 20% off Secret 12, 20% off Living Defense Parasite Cleanse, 25% off on Biome Defense. That's the great probiotic, Winter Sun. And it goes on and on and on. DNA Force is back in, about to sell out. So is the bone broth formula, caveman formula with chaga mushroom, and so many other great things like bee pollen and turmeric. I mean, it's incredible. And your purchase funds the entire operation. Look at this review from Greg, an undisclosed location from Power Reviews. Brain Force Plus gave me mental stamina to win my case. Facing the fight of my life to keep the big banks from stealing my home, I took them to the federal court, only I didn't have a lawyer. Already, my brain fog had lifted, thanks Survival Shield X2. But it was Brain Force that gave me the mental stamina to represent myself and save my home. Thanks, Brain Force Plus. That's InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. Commit today. Sign up for auto ship on products that you already use and already like, many of you. Get 10% off, and then we know that we've got that money budgeted each month coming in from the thousands of folks that are signed up for auto ship at InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. And we've got the great crew here until 6 o'clock every day answering the phones, taking your orders. After that, it rolls over to an answering service we've had for 20 years here in Austin, and they do a great job as well. So InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. And a lot of people don't want to read fantasy-based stuff. A lot of people want to only read fiction because reality's too hardcore for them. But just like with James Wesley Rawls has woken up millions of people with his best-selling novels, it's the same thing with our guest, Matt Bracken, who I know. I've read 2 of his books. I've told my crew I want to carry all his books at InfoWarsStore.com, so let's get that done. But go to enemiesforeignanddomestic.com. He has his new novel out, and we'll talk about that before he leaves us at 20 after next hour. But I do want to go to calls in about 10 minutes. I'm going to try to give you the floor now because we've had some short segments here to flesh out this revolution they're trying to engineer, who the globalists are, how you think we can win this thing, and what happens if a shooting war starts, and what some of the scenarios are. Former Navy SEAL counterterrorism expert Matt Bracken from enemiesforeignanddomestic.com. Kind of recap for new audiences, please, and then let's get into the information you haven't covered yet.
First, my new book is not out yet. It will be in maybe 2 months. It's in the editing phase right now, but the cover is done. Cover art is done. I think that what we're going to see as the Antifas are getting pushed back and unmasked, which is going to make them very desperate, I think we're going to see a false flag shooting. And people say, well, why would you talk about something as horrible as this? Will it become a self-fulfilling prophecy? And the reason that I do, and it's in my first novel, it begins with somebody shooting into a stadium, to precipitate a panic stampede, a mass casualty terrorism act. By talking about these things in advance, I hope to sort of either take them off the table as tactics because the surprise element will be lost. And if they do happen, we'll be more prepared to...
Sure. But we have new people, thousands tuning in literally every minute. Recap briefly the tectonic system going on, the globalist launched revolution that you believe is inevitable, and how you think that could unfold.
Yeah, the globalists are not going to surrender after Brexit and Trump, and we don't know what's going to happen in the French election next. But I think that they're moving to the burn down the house phase, which is when they absolutely have run the end of the rope out. The banks are going to collapse eventually. They don't want to be held responsible. It's better to just precipitate a huge revolutionary era, globally, a collapse because they figure that they've got the wealth, the mansions, the castles, fortresses, stored food, gold to ride out anything. And even if half the world's population was gone, they figure they'll be on top at the end, and they'll just come back and reclaim their ownership.
And by the way, we've been talking about that for a decade from our inside sources. Last 3 years, every major publication, the New Yorker magazine, New York Times, Associated Press, admit the billionaires are fleeing to Kauai, Hawaii. They're fleeing to other Hawaiian islands. They're fleeing to Tasmania. They're fleeing to even more rural areas and faraway areas. And building armored fortresses and even getting private security firms. Don't they know those very private security firms almost universally hate their guts? And if everything really goes belly up, they're dead? I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Although at the top, they're surrounded by yes men. So I think that they live in very insulated bubbles. And imagine being a Leonardo DiCaprio. Everybody around you is kissing your butt 24 hours a day. So, you're never going to get it is sickening. But these tectonic forces, we now can push back. We have a new media. InfoWars is a big chunk of it. That's why BuzzFeed goes after you. I mean, I consider it praise, not a great thing, but like when the Southern Poverty Law Center goes after me or you, that's great. You're known by your enemies. If they thought you were nothing, they wouldn't pay any attention to you. They figure that you're becoming important, so that's why they try to...
Well, sure. Why do you think, and we'll get back in the scenario, they had Colbert, every other big night show, all the other TV channels, it's still ongoing every day, attacking, lying, spewing against me. I don't think I'm that important. I think we're a test case on how to destroy somebody.
I think that you are that important because you're the emerging new media. We're already talking about Fox possibly breaking up. For now, Hannity staying aboard. But I mean, there could very well be a breakup of Fox and a new conservative television network started. So yeah, there are big things happening in media. InfoWars is part of it. But we're not going to win this information war. It's impossible to win because each side is getting their information through their own filter.
They've got too many zombies.
Yeah, but so we basically have these two forces, and it's worse than two tectonic plates because in many of our cities and in many of our regions, we have 3 or more cultural and demographic
fault lines.
All right. So there's going to be a big rupture of these fault lines. The big energy release is when all the buildings and bridges fall down, and socially it'll be catastrophic. So yeah, I think we're going to see more of these small attacks like the knife attack in Texas, but I think we're going to see transformer attacks going after the grid. It looks like a probe was done in Henrico, Virginia, with somebody shooting a rifle at a big transformer 2 nights in a row. So, which has the hallmarks to me of a test. A stray bullet supposedly landed in a stadium. That might have grazed a woman. That might have been a trajectory test.
And by the way, that's a great way to demonize guns, especially high caliber, if people start going after infrastructure with it.
And right, not only infrastructure, but other soft targets. And when a false flag like this is done, it's typically done against an ally group of either Islamists or leftists. These are both totalitarian ideologies that absolutely 100% believe the ends justify the means. Meaning, if we have to kill all the Christians, that's okay. Or if we have to set up gulags or slave labor camps, that's okay. So if it's a very effective tactic to use a false flag and have an act of terror blamed on your enemy, I would expect it'll be an ally group of Antifa that's shot. Say, for example, a woman's march. It won't be Antifa shooting Antifa, but it'll be an Antifa shooting an assault rifle, so-called, at say a woman's march or a global warming march.
And by the way, that all came out in the WikiLeaks that all over the country they funded women to go to start fights and be beaten up. And when that didn't work, they started hiring men to separately go do the beating up on camera, creating false flags. They were caught in false flags.
Yes, the false flags work. Wars have been started over false flags. The Germans did it with,
Operation Himmler.
Right. So there are, and many wars started by dictators start with a false flag. Now it's even more efficacious if you have a compliant stooge media that's not going to dig into the facts behind a false flag, but are just going to trumpet and parroted 100%. So I think that the most likely scenario is not a bomb. Bomb making requires some skill, and the people that do it are likely to leave forensic fingerprints on their computer and so forth. But to shoot into a crowd and then leave right-wing literature at the scene, like I have in my first novel, Enemies Foreign and Domestic.
It's perfect.
It's perfect because the national stooge media...
They'll jump right on it, and then you'll be a conspiracy
100%.
theorist if you question the official narrative.
Right, which is that right-wing gun nuts shot at peace-loving, global warming marchers. And, the Antifa types and the Islamists both absolutely think that is moral and valid and legitimate.
And let's expand on that now.
In ancient times, man roamed the earth in a constant state of hunting or being hunted. Introducing Caveman, where cutting-edge science meets ancient super nutrients. Secure your bottle right now at InfoWarsStore.com.